Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the cold, harsh world of the Vikings. Picture this, you're standing on the edge of a freezing fjord, the wind biting at your skin as it whips across the ice-covered land. The sun barely breaks through the thick clouds, and the cold seeps into your bones. You've got your axe in hand, a longship in the distance, and your body is shivering under the weight of the bitter Nordic winter. You probably won't survive this without some clever thinking, unless, of course, you have a trick up your sleeve. You might wonder how the Vikings, those fearsome seafaring warriors, managed to stay warm in such a harsh environment. Well, tonight, we're going to talk about how they did it by turning fish skin into coats. Yes, you heard that right. While you're probably more accustomed to the idea of wearing leather or wool, the Vikings went a different route, using something they had in abundance: fish. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're feeling adventurous, drop your location and the time in the comments. Let's see just how far and wide this little historical journey goes. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Now, back to our Viking adventurers. They didn't have the luxury of modern, cozy jackets. No fleece-lined hoods, no down-filled parkas, just layers of rough, homemade clothing. In a land where winters seemed endless, staying warm wasn't just a matter of comfort. It was a matter of survival. The Vikings were no strangers to innovation, and they came up with a method for keeping their bodies shielded from the cold using fish skin. It might sound strange, but this practical solution helped them endure the brutal elements of the north. But how did they manage this? How did they turn something as slippery as fish skin into a sturdy, weatherproof coat? Let's start with the basics. The Vikings, with their intimate connection to the sea, relied on fish not just for food, but as a resource for clothing. Fish, particularly large ones like cod, haddock, and even salmon, were a constant part of their diet and daily life. The sheer number of fish they caught made it natural for them to experiment with using fish skin in ways we might not think of today. With their rugged, resourceful nature, the Vikings would have taken a fish, gutted it, cleaned it, and preserved every part of it. They didn't just eat the meat. They used the skin, too. Now, imagine you're a Viking in your village, and winter is settling in. You can't afford to waste anything. You're out on the boat, the cold air biting at your cheeks, hauling in fish after fish. But instead of throwing away the skins, you begin to think. The skin is tough, durable. What if it could be turned into something useful? Something that could shield you from the cold? This was the beginning of a Viking innovation that would help them survive the brutal winters of Scandinavia. Historians still argue whether the use of fish skin for clothing was widespread across all Viking cultures, but evidence suggests that the practice was common in coastal regions, especially for those who relied heavily on the sea. There are even records of fish skin garments being used by Norse settlers in the North Atlantic colonies, like Iceland and Greenland, where the climate was even more unforgiving. With the availability of fish and the necessity of staying warm, the Vikings had found a way to make the most out of what the sea offered them. The use of fish skin, though fascinating, was no simple task. It required a level of craftsmanship and patience that most people today might not even imagine. The fish skin, as tough and durable as it was, needed to undergo a process known as tanning before it could be used as clothing. This wasn't the same tanning process we use for leather today. It was something altogether more complex, and often involved techniques that are now lost to history. It wasn't enough to just slap the fish skin on your body and call it a day. It took time, effort, and above all, knowledge. The tanning of fish skin was a process of transforming the skin from something raw and slimy into something sturdy, waterproof, and wearable. And as with most Viking crafts, the methods were often passed down through generations. Fish skin was soaked in water, scraped clean of any excess flesh, and then treated with natural substances like oak bark or animal fats. Over time, these skins would be softened, dried, and shaped into the garments that kept the Vikings warm and dry during their coldest days. It's interesting to think about the Vikings' attention to detail in their clothing. Every layer mattered. Underneath their fish skin coats, they would wear woolen tunics, and over them they might add a cloak or a heavy fur-lined jacket to add even more insulation. Fish skin wasn't the only material they used, but it was an essential part of their layered approach to surviving the extreme conditions they faced. But here's the kicker. While we associate fish skin coats with the Vikings, this wasn't just a Viking invention. People in other parts of the world, like the indigenous peoples of the Arctic, also used fish skin for clothing, showing that the resourcefulness of turning fish skin into a wearable material wasn't unique to just one culture. It was a matter of survival for those living in cold coastal environments. Historians still debate just how much of the Viking population used fish skin for clothing. Did it become a widespread practice among all Vikings, or was it limited to coastal communities that had easier access to fish? The answer, like many things in Viking history, remains elusive. However, there is enough evidence to suggest that fish skin was a key material for those who needed to withstand the frigid conditions. As we journey deeper into the world of the Vikings and their fish skin coats, we'll learn how these garments were made, what life was like wearing them, and how they helped the Vikings survive and thrive in one of the harshest climates on Earth. So stay with me as we venture into the crafting process, the practical use of fish skin, and the incredible resilience of those who wore these garments to conquer the cold. We're back, and if you thought Vikings just grabbed any piece of fish skin and threw it together into a coat, you'd be sorely mistaken. The process of using fish skin for warmth was a highly developed craft with specific techniques that ensured the coats they made could actually stand up to the unforgiving elements. While today, we have high-tech fabrics designed to wick away moisture and keep us warm, the Vikings had to rely on the natural properties of fish skin. But what made it so special? To truly understand how these fish skin coats were made, we need to first look at the skin itself. Fish skin is an incredibly durable material. Unlike animal hides, fish skin is naturally coated with a layer of mucus that makes it waterproof. When fresh, the skin has a rubbery texture, which, when treated properly, turns into a tough, flexible material perfect for keeping out the cold. The waterproof nature of fish skin made it an ideal choice for Vikings, especially considering how much time they spent on ships or near water. But how did the Vikings transform this slippery substance into something they could wear? First, the Vikings would catch fish, usually large varieties like cod, which were abundant in their waters. After catching the fish, they would carefully remove the skin. Unlike modern leather-making processes, the skin wasn't simply tossed aside or thrown into the fire for food scraps. Instead, the Vikings began a long and arduous process of preparing the fish skin for use. The skin needed to be properly scraped to remove any remaining flesh or fat. This step was important because any leftover tissue could cause the skin to rot or deteriorate over time. Once the skin was cleaned and scraped, the Vikings would soak it in water for a period of time to soften it. This was necessary because fresh fish skin is stiff and brittle. Soaking it allowed the skin to become more pliable and easier to work with. But the real magic happened during the tanning process. The Vikings didn't have modern chemicals or tanning agents. Instead, they used natural materials like tannin-rich oak bark, which was readily available in their environment. This tannin would bond with the fish skin, making it more durable and less likely to break down over time. After soaking the skin in tannin-rich solutions, the Vikings would then stretch and dry the skin, which would further toughen it and give it the flexibility it needed for clothing. Historians are still fascinated by the specific methods Vikings used for tanning fish skin. While we have general ideas based on archaeological findings, the full details remain elusive. Some believe the Vikings may have used a process similar to that of other ancient cultures, which involved rubbing animal fats or oils into the skin to make it more supple. Others suggest that they might have used fermented fish parts to achieve a particular texture. The exact combination of techniques remains a mystery. But one thing is clear: the process was time-consuming and required a high level of skill. Once the tanning process was complete, the fish skin could then be turned into garments. The Vikings often sewed together several pieces of fish skin to create coats, trousers, or even cloaks. These garments would be stitched together with sinew or other available materials, creating a solid layer of protection against the cold. What's fascinating is that fish skin was not only durable but also surprisingly light, making it easier to wear than one might expect from such a tough material. Now, let's talk about the actual benefits of these fish skin coats. The most obvious advantage was that they were waterproof. If you've ever spent any amount of time near a body of water, you know that getting wet in cold conditions can be a quick route to hypothermia. Fish skin, being waterproof, would keep the Vikings dry even when they were caught in a downpour or working on the deck of a ship during a storm. This made the fish skin coat an essential piece of gear for any Viking adventurer. Another benefit was that fish skin was relatively breathable. Unlike other waterproof materials, it allowed moisture from the body to escape, preventing the wearer from getting too sweaty underneath their coat. This was particularly important for Vikings who would often be engaged in physical activity like rowing or fighting. A sweaty body under layers of clothing in the freezing cold would be a recipe for disaster. So having a material that could regulate moisture was invaluable. The flexibility of fish skin was another advantage. When treated properly, fish skin could be as soft and supple as leather, meaning it wouldn't restrict movement. Whether the Viking was swinging an axe or rowing a longship, the flexibility of their fish skin garments allowed for ease of motion. This made fish skin coats an ideal choice for warriors who needed both protection and freedom of movement. And here's where the quirky side of Viking fashion comes in. Fish skin was not just practical, it was often beautifully crafted. Historians have found evidence that Vikings didn't just settle for basic fish skin garments, they often took the time to decorate and embellish them. The skins were sometimes dyed or engraved with intricate patterns, turning a practical piece of clothing into something uniquely personal. This attention to detail wasn't just about keeping warm, it was also about identity. A Viking warrior's fish skin coat could tell a story from the fish that were used to the markings that were added later. Historians still argue about whether the Vikings considered these coats a mark of status, or if they were simply viewed as functional survival gear. Some believe that wearing well-crafted fish skin garments could have signified a warrior's experience or rank, while others think the Vikings didn't place much stock in fashion and simply wore whatever would protect them from the elements. Regardless of the reasoning, it's clear that fish skin coats were not only a necessity for survival, but also a reflection of Viking craftsmanship and attention to detail. At the end of the day, fish skin was a crucial material for the Vikings, offering protection from the cold and water, while also allowing them to maintain their mobility and dexterity. This unusual material may seem odd to us today, but it was a key element in the Viking way of life, a way of life that required constant adaptation and resourcefulness. The next time you think about the Vikings, consider the fish skin coat that helped them brave the cold, and perhaps even wonder how many other ancient cultures used similar techniques to stay warm. As we'll see, this is just one example of how the Vikings' ingenuity helped them survive in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Now that we've covered the basics of how Vikings turned fish skin into sturdy waterproof coats, let's take a deeper dive into the complex, almost mysterious world of tanning techniques. The process of turning raw fish skin into something wearable wasn't just a casual task, it was a true art form that required skill, patience, and a deep understanding of materials. This was not a craft you could rush through. No, the Vikings had to know exactly what they were doing, because the difference between a well-tanned fish skin coat and one that would fall apart in the cold was quite literally life or death. The question many historians still debate is how exactly the Vikings went about tanning the fish skins. There's a surprising amount of mystery surrounding this process, mainly because no complete written records survive from the Viking Age, detailing the exact methods they used. We have some clues, however, based on archaeological findings, folklore, and comparative studies with other ancient cultures. But historians still argue about the specifics. Was the tanning process similar to how leather was treated? Or was there something unique in the way the Vikings prepared their fish skins? One of the key materials used by the Vikings was oak bark, rich in tannins. Tannins are organic compounds found in plants, and they have the remarkable ability to bond with proteins in animal skins, making them more durable and resistant to decay. This wasn't just an accident. Oak bark was plentiful in the Nordic forests, and its properties were well known to the Vikings. They would gather the bark, crush it into a powder, and then soak the fish skin in this natural tannin solution for hours or days, depending on the desired effect. But this was only one part of the process. The fish skin needed to be scraped clean of any remaining flesh or fat. This wasn't just for aesthetic reasons. Removing the fat and leftover tissue was essential to ensuring the skin wouldn't rot. Fish, unlike land mammals, has a higher water content, which makes it more prone to decay if not prepared properly. The Vikings knew this, so they took great care in scraping and cleaning the skins thoroughly. They likely used sharp tools, such as bone or stone knives, to carefully remove all excess material. This is the type of task that demands patience. The Vikings couldn't afford to waste a single fish skin, especially if they were relying on it for warmth during the brutal Nordic winters. Once the skin was cleaned, it was soaked in water to soften it. Fresh fish skin can be quite stiff and brittle, but soaking it in water helped make it more pliable. The Vikings were experts at this stage. They knew just how long to soak the skins to ensure the right level of softness and flexibility. Too little, and the skin would remain too tough to work with. Too much, and it would become too fragile to endure the harsh conditions. This balance required a level of expertise that only came with experience. As the skin soaked, the Vikings would prepare other parts of the tanning process, like boiling water, and adding natural oils or animal fats to help make the fish skin more supple. This was an essential step because fish skin on its own can be quite coarse. By treating it with oils, the Vikings helped soften the skin, making it more comfortable to wear and better at trapping heat against the body. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the tanning process is the possibility that Vikings used fermented fish parts in their treatments. Some scholars believe that Vikings might have used a technique known as brain tanning, where the brains of fish or animals are used to soften and preserve the skin. This would have added an interesting layer of complexity to the tanning process. Imagine being a Viking tanner carefully preparing the skins with natural substances like oak bark water and possibly fish brains. It's a skill that few today would even consider, but to the Vikings, it was just another step in ensuring their survival. Historians still debate whether the use of fish brains was widespread among Viking tanners or if it was just a regional practice. But it's clear that the Vikings didn't take shortcuts. They used whatever resources they had at hand to perfect their tanning techniques. Whether or not they used fish brains, the fact remains that they created a durable material that was waterproof, flexible, and able to stand up to the harshest of conditions. Once the tanning process was complete, the skin would be stretched and dried. This stretching was essential for ensuring the skin would have the proper texture and fit for clothing. Over time, as the skin dried, it would become more flexible and ready to be sewn into a garment. This process was tedious, requiring a great deal of time and effort. It wasn't just a quick fix, it was a labor of love, a testament to the Vikings' ability to adapt and survive in an unforgiving environment. The end result, fish skin garments that were just as effective at protecting their wearers as modern waterproof jackets, if not more so. These garments were warm, durable, and most importantly, they kept the Vikings dry. They could wear their fish skin coats on long voyages in the coldest of winters, and while engaging in their famously brutal raids. Fish skin provided a level of practicality that many modern materials would envy. Historians still debate whether all Vikings used fish skin for clothing, or if it was more of a specialized practice for those who lived in coastal regions or near rivers. The Vikings were nothing if not resourceful, and they made use of whatever materials were available. While fish skin might have been a more prominent material for those who spent most of their time on the sea, it's likely that Vikings living inland also employed other materials such as leather or wool in their clothing. But for the coastal Vikings, fish skin was an essential resource, one that helped them not only survive, but thrive in a world where warmth and protection from the elements were paramount. In the next section, we'll take a closer look at how fish skin was actually sewn into clothing, how the Vikings crafted full coats, trousers, and cloaks out of this amazing material. We'll explore the techniques they used to stitch together pieces of fish skin, and how these garments were worn in everyday Viking life, from raids to feasts to fishing trips. Now that we've seen how the Vikings tanned fish skin into a usable material, it's time to dive into the next step of the process, turning those tough waterproof skins into actual garments. The crafting of a fish skin coat wasn't a simple affair. It required skilled hands, patience, and a deep understanding of how to transform raw materials into wearable functional clothing. The art of sewing fish skin into something both practical and durable was a significant achievement for the Vikings, one that helped them conquer the elements and thrive in some of the harshest conditions on Earth. To start with, fish skin isn't like traditional leather. It's much thinner and more flexible, but also more fragile, which means it can tear easily if not handled with care. Unlike leather, which has a grain to it, fish skin has a smooth, sometimes rubbery texture that requires special treatment to ensure it can hold together for long periods. That's why the Vikings had to develop specific techniques for sewing and joining pieces of fish skin to make them both functional and long-lasting. So, how did they do it? First, they would cut the fish skins into appropriate shapes and sizes depending on what kind of garment they were creating. The Vikings weren't making just any ordinary coat, they were making pieces of clothing that would need to endure extreme cold and wet conditions. This meant that the fish skin had to be carefully measured and cut to avoid any weak spots. The last thing a Viking would want on a cold, rainy day was a tear in their coat. Once the skins were cut, the Vikings would begin the process of stitching them together. Now, imagine for a moment you're a Viking seamstress or tailor. You've got your fish skin, and your tools are simple yet effective. Probably bone needles and animal sinew, or strong fibrous plant material for thread. This method of sewing would require precision and a steady hand, especially since the skins weren't particularly easy to work with. They might not have had sewing machines, but they had an intimate understanding of their materials. Vikings were well accustomed to working with natural resources, and they knew exactly how to manipulate the fish skin to get the best results. The Vikings' sewing methods for fish skin coats likely involved stitching the pieces together using small, tight stitches. This was crucial to ensure that the garment would be durable and water-resistant. If the stitching was too loose or the material wasn't secured properly, the coat would be ineffective at protecting the wearer from the elements. The use of sinew, or thick natural fibers as thread, was important because it was both strong and durable qualities the Vikings needed in any garment that had to withstand the wear and tear of daily life. And just like any good craftsperson, the Vikings didn't just throw a coat together and call it a day. They were known for their attention to detail. Some historians believe that the fish skin coats might have been reinforced with additional layers or stitching to increase their strength. After all, these coats weren't just for walking around the village. They were for battling the cold on long journeys across the sea, for fighting in raids, and for surviving the harsh winters of Scandinavia. Any garment made for such conditions had to be well crafted and resilient. What's fascinating is that fish skin wasn't just used for coats. The Vikings used it for a variety of garments, including trousers, cloaks, and even boots. For boots, they would stitch pieces of fish skin together, creating waterproof footwear that could withstand the soggy, icy terrain of their homeland. These boots were vital for any Viking who needed to travel by foot in the often frozen landscape, where slipping or getting wet could be a death sentence. And let's not forget the importance of waterproofing. Fish skin, as we've mentioned, is naturally waterproof due to the mucus coating that protects it in the water. When properly tanned and sewn, fish skin garments would keep the wearer dry even in the heaviest rain. This was especially important for Vikings who spent much of their time on ships or near water. On a Viking longship, rain and sea spray were constant, and being soaked to the bone was a real threat. But with a fish skin coat, you could stay relatively dry, allowing you to focus on the more important things like raiding or navigating the treacherous waters of the North Sea. In addition to their waterproofing properties, fish skin garments were also surprisingly warm. While not as insulating as wool fish skin, still provided a layer of protection against the cold. When combined with other materials like fur or wool, fish skin coats could keep the Vikings warm, even in the most extreme conditions. Imagine a Viking warrior donned in a fish skin coat, fur-lined cloak, and thick woolen tunic, standing against the biting winter winds. The combination of these materials created an effective barrier against both water and cold, ensuring that the Viking would survive another day on their long voyages or brutal raids. Now, let's talk about fit. As with any piece of clothing, the Vikings had to make sure their fish skin garments fit properly. They didn't have modern sizing systems, so each garment had to be individually tailored to the wearer. The Vikings used their knowledge of proportions and body types to create garments that were comfortable and functional. A Viking warrior needed freedom of movement for combat, while a fisherman needed flexibility for rowing a boat or casting a net. The fish skin garment was versatile enough to accommodate these different needs. It was likely that no two fish skin coats were exactly alike, as each was made to fit the person who would wear it. And while we think of the Vikings as fierce warriors, they were also quite practical in their fashion. Fish skin coats might not have been the most glamorous garments, but they were a crucial part of Viking life. There was no room for frills or unnecessary adornment when your survival depended on staying warm, dry, and mobile. The Vikings may not have cared much about the latest trends, but their clothing was designed with one thing in mind: survival. Historians still debate how widespread the use of fish skin was across Viking society. Was it something only the wealthier coastal Vikings could afford, or was it used by all members of society? It's likely that fish skin was more common in coastal regions where fish were readily available. But it's also possible that inland Vikings, who had access to other materials like leather and wool, used fish skin in combination with these other resources. In the next section, we'll explore how fish skin garments played a role in Viking society beyond just survival. How did they use these coats in their everyday lives? And what did it mean to wear one of these unique pieces of clothing during a Viking raid or journey? We'll take a look at the cultural significance of fish skin garments and their place in Viking fashion. Now that we've explored how Vikings crafted their fish skin garments, let's take a moment to consider their role in the Viking lifestyle. While fish skin might seem like a purely functional material, these garments were more than just a way to stay warm and dry. They were an essential part of Viking society, playing an integral role in everyday life, from fishing trips to long voyages, and even in the world of warfare. When you think about it, a fish skin coat wasn't just a coat, it was a piece of Viking identity. Vikings were first and foremost a seafaring people. Their longships were the envy of the known world, and their success on the seas relied heavily on the ability to stay dry and warm in the harsh, often unpredictable conditions of the North Atlantic. Whether they were sailing off to raid distant shores or simply navigating their home waters, a Viking's survival was often dependent on their ability to protect themselves from the elements. This is where fish skin clothing truly came into play. The Vikings didn't have modern waterproof fabrics or synthetic insulation, but they didn't need them. They had fish skin, a material naturally suited to their environment. For sailors, especially those who spent long periods at sea, fish skin garments were indispensable. Imagine the challenges they faced: cold, wet conditions that could last for days or even weeks at a time. The sea was not a forgiving place. It could freeze you to the bone during the winter, and even in summer, the wind and sea spray could leave you soaked. In this world, having a fish skin coat was a matter of life and death. The waterproof quality of fish skin ensured that sailors could stay dry, which in turn helped regulate their body temperature. Staying dry was essential for avoiding hypothermia and for maintaining physical energy during long, exhausting voyages. And these voyages weren't leisurely cruises across calm waters. No, Viking longships were built for speed and maneuverability, which meant that the crew was often exposed to the elements. The ship itself was built for practicality, but the harsh weather conditions made practical clothing just as important. Without fish skin garments, the cold would have become unbearable, and the exposure to wet conditions could have resulted in illness or even death. So these garments were far more than simple clothing. They were vital tools for survival. On Viking raids, fish skin coats were just as important. When the Vikings launched raids against their neighbors, they didn't just rely on their weapons and ships. They needed to be prepared for anything. and that included dealing with the elements. Imagine this. You're a Viking warrior out on a long voyage to raid a distant land. You've already been at sea for days, battling rough waters and storms. When you land on the enemy shore, you're already tired, wet, and cold. The last thing you need is your clothing failing you in this critical moment. That's where your fish skin coat comes in. It provides that much-needed layer of protection, keeping you dry as you move quickly into battle. The Vikings were not only known for their military prowess, but also for their endurance. Their ability to adapt to and survive in such an unforgiving environment was one of the keys to their success. Fish skin garments were a perfect reflection of this adaptability. They weren't just using the material because it was available. They were using it because it worked. It kept them warm, dry, and mobile, which were all essential qualities for a Viking warrior. But what about the other aspects of Viking life? Were fish skin garments worn only for raids and ship voyages, or were they part of everyday life in Viking society? As it turns out, fish skin garments were just as common in day-to-day life, especially for those living in coastal areas. These regions were heavily reliant on fishing, and fish skin was often used for more than just coats and cloaks. Vikings made trousers, boots, and other items out of fish skin. In a world where resources were often scarce, utilizing every part of the fish was a smart way to make sure nothing went to waste. Fish skin wasn't just practical for surviving the cold, it also provided a functional solution for many aspects of Viking life. It's also worth considering the cultural significance of these garments. Vikings were a proud people, and their clothing often reflected their status and identity. Fish skin coats, while not flashy or ornate, were an important symbol of the Viking connection to the sea. These garments spoke to the Vikings' ability to thrive in a harsh, unforgiving environment. They were a testament to the ingenuity of the Viking people who used the resources available to them in ways that modern cultures might not even consider. In a sense, wearing a fish skin coat was a way for a Viking to express their connection to the sea and to the survival skills that were essential to their way of life. Historians still argue about the cultural and social implications of fish skin garments. Were they purely practical, or did they carry some deeper cultural meaning? Some believe that fish skin clothing was symbolic of a Viking's relationship with the sea after all. Fish were a central part of the Viking diet and economy, and fish skin garments were a natural extension of that connection. Others argue that these garments were strictly utilitarian, with little to no cultural significance beyond their practical uses. However, there's little doubt that the garments played an essential role in Viking society, whether they were seen as a symbol of strength or simply as a means of survival. One particularly interesting aspect of Viking fashion is the idea that fish skin might have been used in combination with other materials such as wool or fur. Vikings, being resourceful, likely incorporated whatever materials were available to them to create the best possible garments. This could mean that a Viking warrior's fish skin coat was lined with wool for added warmth, or that fur was sewn into the cuffs or collar for extra protection against the cold. These hybrid garments would have been incredibly effective in terms of both functionality and comfort. But the use of fish skin didn't stop with clothing. Vikings were also known to use fish skin for other practical items. For example, fish skin was used to make waterproof bags, containers, and even shields. The durability and waterproof qualities of fish skin made it an ideal material for many Viking tools and everyday items. This all speaks to the Vikings' unique approach to living in a challenging environment. They didn't have modern tools or materials, but they made do with what they had and made it work incredibly well. In the next section, we'll look at how the use of fish skin garments began to decline. As the Vikings moved into the medieval period, new materials and techniques began to replace traditional fish skin clothing. But even as fish skin fell out of fashion, the ingenuity behind this practice remained a key part of Viking history, shaping the way the Vikings adapted to their world. As we step into the later years of the Viking Age and move toward the medieval period, we begin to see significant shifts in the materials and methods used by the Norse people. Fish skin garments, once a staple of Viking survival, gradually began to fall out of use as newer and more efficient materials took their place. But why did such a practical and well-suited material like fish skin fade from Viking society? Let's explore the decline of fish skin coats and the factors that contributed to this change. By the end of the Viking Age, the world was changing. New trade routes were opening up, bringing different materials and ideas to the Nordic regions. With these new exchanges, the Vikings were exposed to different kinds of fabric, such as wool and even linen, which became more accessible and desirable as time went on. Wool, in particular, would become a prominent material in Viking and later medieval clothing. Unlike fish skin, which required significant preparation and skill to transform into wearable garments, wool could be sheared, spun, and woven relatively easily into clothing that was also warm, durable, and much less labor-intensive to produce. Wool had its own set of advantages that made it more appealing in the long run. For one, it was easier to process. While fish skin required an intricate tanning process, wool could be harvested from sheep and spun into yarn much more quickly. The process of weaving wool into clothing was more straightforward, and it could be done on a much larger scale. As Viking society became more interconnected with other cultures, the widespread availability of wool made it the go-to material for clothing. And unlike fish skin, wool was already a common material in other parts of Europe, so it wasn't as foreign to Viking society as fish skin might have been. Historians still debate the exact reasons for the decline of fish skin clothing. Some believe that the rise of wool and other textiles was simply a matter of convenience. The trade networks of the Viking world expanded during the medieval period, and with that came a greater access to textiles that could be processed more easily than fish skin. Other scholars suggest that the decline of fish skin was linked to the changing social structures within Viking society. As settlements grew larger and more complex, there may have been a move away from the raw, natural materials like fish skin, which were seen as old-fashioned, in favor of more refined and domesticated fabrics like wool. In addition to the rise of wool, the Vikings also began to trade more extensively with the Eastern world, which brought new technologies and materials. Silk, for example, became a luxury fabric that was sought after by the Viking elite. With the availability of more luxurious materials, fish skin likely became less desirable, particularly as wool and other fabrics became easier to acquire and produce. But it's not just the advent of new materials that contributed to the decline of fish skin garments. Another factor was the changing nature of Viking society itself. The Viking Age, which was marked by raiding, exploring, and the pursuit of wealth through conquest, gradually came to an end by the early 11th century. As the Vikings settled into new lands and became integrated into the larger European feudal system, their focus shifted away from raiding and seafaring. The need for practical, durable clothing that could withstand the harsh conditions of the Viking world diminished. With this shift in lifestyle, the demand for fish skin garments waned as well. Fish skin garments had been perfect for the rigorous nomadic lifestyle of the Viking warrior. But as Viking society became more settled and urbanized, the need for such specialized clothing declined. Fish skin, while incredibly effective in specific circumstances, was no longer as practical for the average Viking as it once had been. The move toward more domesticated, standardized materials like wool was a natural progression as Viking society grew and evolved. However, the decline of fish skin garments doesn't mean they disappeared entirely. While wool and other fabrics began to dominate Viking fashion, there are still traces of fish skin clothing in the archaeological record. Some Viking graves, particularly those in coastal areas, have revealed the remains of fish skin garments. This suggests that while fish skin was no longer as widespread, it didn't vanish overnight. It likely persisted in more isolated or traditional communities that continued to rely on their seafaring heritage. Interestingly, fish skin's decline also reflects a broader trend in the Viking world. As Vikings settled into new lands, they began to adopt the customs and materials of the cultures around them. This wasn't a sudden abandonment of Viking tradition, but rather a gradual blending of old practices with new ones. While the iconic fish skin coat might have lost its place as a must-have piece of Viking attire, the innovation behind it remained part of Viking ingenuity. The Vikings, ever adaptable, didn't throw out what worked. They just found new ways to incorporate it into their ever-evolving world. As Viking society moved toward the medieval period, the clothing styles also became more varied. The Vikings, much like any other culture, evolved their fashion choices as time passed. While fish skin might have been a practical solution for survival, it was never going to be the last word in Viking fashion. New materials like wool linen and eventually cotton would become the go-to fabrics, pushing fish skin into the background. But what fish skin represented resourcefulness, innovation, and an intimate connection with the natural world remained at the heart of Viking life. In the next section, we'll shift our focus to the modern day and how fish skin garments once relegated to the past are being rediscovered. Historians and artisans are now working to revive the ancient craft of fish skin tanning and clothing production. Some are even incorporating fish skin into modern fashion and technology. It's fascinating to think that something so old could make a comeback in the 21st century, and that a practice once used by warriors and explorers is now being celebrated for its historical and environmental significance. Fast forward to the modern era, where ancient practices that once seemed lost to time are finding a surprising revival. Fish skin clothing, particularly the art of tanning and crafting garments from fish skins, is making a comeback, not in the traditional Viking villages of Scandinavia, but within the world of contemporary fashion and sustainable craftsmanship. This return to an age-old technique highlights a unique intersection of history, innovation, and environmental consciousness, reminding us that sometimes the best solutions to modern problems can be found in ancient practices. One of the driving forces behind the revival of fish skin clothing is the growing interest in sustainability. As the fashion industry grapples with its environmental impact, many designers and artisans are looking for alternatives to traditional leather and synthetic materials. Fish skin, with its naturally durable and waterproof qualities, has proven to be an attractive option. Not only is it biodegradable, unlike synthetic materials, but it also comes from a renewable resource that would otherwise go to waste. As demand for more sustainable materials grows, fish skin has stepped back into the spotlight as an eco-friendly alternative to other, more resource-heavy materials. This resurgence of fish skin garments is part of a broader movement towards upcycling and using materials that might otherwise be discarded. In many ways, the Vikings were ahead of their time when it came to resourcefulness. They didn't waste what they had, especially in the harsh environments they called home. The modern-day revival of fish skin as a material is in a way a return to the Viking philosophy of making use of everything available, from the largest fish to the tiniest scraps. Fish skin's resurgence isn't just about making a few garments for niche fashion. The modern fish skin industry is growing in various ways. Artisans and small companies have emerged dedicated to reviving the techniques of the past and bringing fish skin back into the world of wearable art. They carefully source fish skins from sustainable fisheries, often using byproducts from the fishing industry that would have otherwise been discarded. By turning these skins into high-end leather goods, such as wallets, belts, bags, and jackets, they're creating products that are not only sustainable but also unique in their texture and appearance. The process of modern fish skin tanning shares some similarities with the ancient methods used by the Vikings. However, technology has advanced, and contemporary tanners use more refined techniques. Instead of relying on the natural tannins from oak bark, many modern fish skin tanners use a combination of organic and non-toxic tanning agents to ensure the material is durable, flexible, and resistant to wear. The skins are then dyed-treated and sometimes embossed to enhance their visual appeal, giving fish skin a modern, polished look that fits right into today's fashion world. One of the standout features of fish skin, whether used by the Vikings or in modern fashion, is its texture. When tanned properly, the fish scales create a unique natural pattern that gives each garment or accessory a distinctive look. Some artisans even go so far as to highlight the scales as a design element, giving the material an almost iridescent quality. For fashion-forward designers, this feature provides an opportunity to create one-of-a-kind pieces with a rich organic aesthetic that no synthetic material could ever replicate. In addition to its unique appearance, fish skin has the same durability and water resistance that made it so appealing to the Vikings. Today, designers are using it for more than just traditional clothing. Fish skin has been incorporated into footwear, handbags, and even furniture. It's a material that is versatile and adaptable, capable of being transformed into high-end luxury goods or functional everyday items. These items aren't just stylish and durable. They're also telling a story about sustainability and a return to more mindful, resource-conscious living. Historians, too, are fascinated by the revival of fish skin. As part of ongoing efforts to preserve Viking history, archaeologists and scholars are studying ancient techniques of fish skin tanning and garment making. Some modern researchers have even collaborated with artisans to recreate Viking-era fish skin coats and clothing based on archaeological findings, which provide valuable insights into Viking clothing culture. This reconnection with the past, driven by both historical curiosity and environmental needs, helps bring Viking history to life in a way that books and lectures cannot. For many people involved in the modern fish skin revival, there's a profound sense of respect for the ingenuity of the Vikings. The ability to take something as simple as a fish and turn it into clothing is a testament to the resourcefulness and creativity that defined the Viking people. In a world where mass production and disposable goods dominate fish skin, represents a return to a simpler, more sustainable way of thinking. It's about making the most of what we have, appreciating the value of natural resources and honoring traditional craftsmanship. This new wave of fish skin fashion has also sparked debates about the role of animal products in modern society. While some environmentalists and animal rights advocates view fish skin as a positive step toward sustainability, others raise concerns about the ethics of using animal byproducts at all. The reality, however, is that fish skin is a byproduct of an industry that already exists, and many of the companies involved in the fish skin movement ensure that the materials they use are sourced responsibly. They emphasize transparency and ethical sourcing, ensuring that the fish skins come from sustainable fisheries that do not harm fish populations or ecosystems. In the coming years, we may see fish skin becoming a more mainstream material in fashion and beyond. It's possible that designers and manufacturers will continue to experiment with it, finding new ways to integrate this ancient material into modern products. The Viking legacy of using every part of the fish to survive may yet inspire new ways to approach sustainability and resourcefulness. And as consumers become increasingly aware of the environmental impact of their purchases, the demand for materials like fish skin is likely to grow. So, as we reflect on the Vikings' ingenuity in using fish skin to stay warm and dry, we can take a moment to appreciate how their resourcefulness continues to inspire us today. What started as a survival tactic in a brutal, frozen land has now become a symbol of sustainability, craftsmanship, and connection to the earth. It's a testament to the enduring power of Viking innovation and the timeless need for humans to adapt, create, and survive no matter the challenges that lie ahead. Now that we've explored the fascinating resurgence of fish skin in modern times, let's take a closer look at some of the unique characteristics of the material that make it stand out both in Viking history and in the present-day world of sustainable fashion. Fish skin has qualities that are quite frankly unlike anything else found in the natural world. When it's properly tanned, the material is incredibly durable, flexible, and has a striking aesthetic appeal, making it perfect for use in a variety of applications. One of the standout features of fish skin is its remarkable durability. Viking-era garments made from fish skin were designed to withstand harsh environments, and this ancient material was incredibly effective at protecting its wearer from the elements. Even today, fish skin clothing is prized for its durability and longevity. While the material may seem delicate at first glance, due to its thinness and texture, it's actually incredibly strong when properly prepared. The fish scales that cover the skin are naturally resistant to tearing, and the tanning process makes the material even more robust. For centuries, fish skin provided Viking sailors and warriors with a waterproof, windproof layer of protection. The modern resurgence of fish skin as a luxury material highlights its versatility. Today, designers are using fish skin in everything from outerwear and accessories to high-end bags, shoes, and even furniture. Unlike traditional leather, which often requires the use of harmful chemicals and resources in its production, fish skin can be sustainably sourced and processed. It's a byproduct of the fishing industry, which just means it's available in abundance and doesn't require additional harm to animals. This makes it an incredibly ethical choice for fashion-conscious consumers who are looking for environmentally friendly alternatives to more traditional materials. The beauty of fish skin lies in its texture, which is both unique and visually striking. When tanned and treated, the scales on the surface create a beautiful, iridescent sheen that is unlike anything produced by animal leather. Fish skin is often soft to the touch, with a texture that combines the smoothness of leather with the natural pattern of the fish scales. When you look at it closely, the texture can vary with different types of fish skin, creating different patterns and looks. For example, cod fish skin has a smooth, sleek surface, while salmon skin is known for its more pronounced, almost pearl-like appearance. This gives designers and artisans an incredible amount of creative freedom to experiment with different textures and colors, adding a luxurious and bespoke quality to their creations. Fish skin also has a remarkable water resistance. This was one of the key benefits for Vikings who relied on the material during their long sea voyages. The natural waterproof qualities of fish skin were essential for keeping the Vikings dry in the cold, damp conditions of their northern homeland. Even today, the water-resistant properties of fish skin make it an excellent choice for modern outerwear footwear and accessories. Whether it's a pair of boots, a waterproof bag, or a jacket, fish skin remains highly effective at repelling moisture, ensuring that wearers stay dry even in the harshest conditions. Another advantage of fish skin, especially for those interested in sustainability, is its biodegradability. Unlike synthetic materials, which can take hundreds of years to break down, fish skin is completely biodegradable when it's no longer in use. This makes it an ideal material for fashion items that are designed to have a minimal environmental impact. As the world grapples with the growing problem of textile waste and pollution, the use of biodegradable materials like fish skin offers a promising alternative to the harmful cycle of fast fashion. But perhaps the most interesting aspect of modern fish skin use is its connection to Viking ingenuity. When we look back at the Vikings' resourcefulness, it's clear that they had an incredibly sophisticated understanding of how to utilize natural resources to their advantage. The Vikings didn't just take from the land, they made use of everything the sea had to offer. They turned fish, a staple of their diet, into a material that could withstand the elements and keep them warm and dry. This kind of resourcefulness is something we can admire today as we look for ways to make the most of the materials available to us in a world that is increasingly focused on sustainability. As we move forward, it's interesting to think about how the Vikings' knowledge of fish skin could influence future innovations. While the material is already making waves in the fashion world, there are endless possibilities for how fish skin might be used in other industries. For example, its unique texture and durability make it an excellent candidate for use in furniture upholstery, automotive interiors, or even in technology products. Some designers are already experimenting with fish skin in high-end furniture, creating luxurious pieces that combine sustainability with beauty. It's not difficult to imagine a future where fish skin becomes a mainstream material in a wide variety of products, from home decor to accessories to everyday items. Of course, there's always a risk that the revival of fish skin might lead to overexploitation, if not done sustainably. The key to keeping fish skin a viable and ethical material is ensuring that the sources remain environmentally responsible. Fortunately, many of the businesses at the forefront of this movement are committed to ethical sourcing and ensuring that their materials come from sustainable fisheries that are committed to conservation. This focus on sustainability and environmental responsibility helps ensure that fish skin remains a viable eco-friendly material for years to come. As we wrap up our exploration of fish skin, it's remarkable to reflect on how something so ancient can have such a modern relevance. The Vikings, with their incredible resourcefulness and intimate knowledge of the world around them, figured out how to turn a simple fish skin into a life-saving garment. Today, we find ourselves rediscovering that same ingenuity using fish skin, not only to create functional waterproof garments, but also to foster a more sustainable, ethical fashion industry. The Viking use of fish skin serves as a powerful reminder that sometimes the answers to our most pressing problems are found in the simplest of solutions. It's a tribute to their legacy and a sign of how innovation can transcend time. So the next time you come across a fish skin product, whether it's a stylish bag, a pair of boots, or an item of clothing, take a moment to appreciate the connection between the past and the present. It's a small piece of Viking history that's making a big impact on the modern world. As we continue our journey through the history and resurgence of fish skin, it's fascinating to think about the Vikings' legacy in a broader sense. Their use of natural materials like fish skin was not just about practicality. It was a reflection of their deep connection to the environment. The Vikings were not just warriors and sailors. They were highly skilled craftspeople who understood how to work with the resources around them in a way that allowed them to survive and thrive in one of the harshest climates on Earth. Their ability to take something as simple as fish skin and turn it into a durable, waterproof garment is a testament to their resourcefulness and ingenuity. But what can we in the modern world learn from the Vikings' use of fish skin? The answer might be more significant than we think. As we face pressing environmental challenges today, the Vikings' relationship with the natural world offers us a glimpse into a more sustainable way of living, one that respects the resources around us and makes the most of what we have. The Viking practice of using fish skin, for example, wasn't about overexploiting resources. It was about finding ways to maximize utility from every part of an animal, including parts that might otherwise have gone to waste. In a time when we're facing mounting concerns over climate change, waste, and resource depletion, there's something inherently valuable in this approach. The Vikings didn't waste anything. Every piece of the fish, every part of the animal was used for a specific purpose, whether for food, tools, or clothing. And it wasn't just about survival. It was a way of life. The Vikings understood that the land and sea provided what they needed, but they also knew the importance of maintaining a balance with nature. They didn't overharvest or take more than they could use. The idea of creating sustainable, long-lasting products from available resources is something that modern cultures are beginning to embrace once again. Fast forward to today, and we can see how this mindset is being incorporated into contemporary movements like the zero-waste and upcycling revolutions. Designers and manufacturers are increasingly focused on reducing waste by rethinking how they source materials. Fish skin as an upcycled material fits perfectly into this model. Rather than allowing fish skin to go to waste, it's being transformed into high-end fashion items, accessories, and even furniture. By reimagining the use of fish skin, modern creators are tapping into a centuries-old practice that not only serves as a solution to a modern problem, but also honors the resourcefulness of the Vikings. The concept of sustainability isn't just a passing trend. It's becoming an essential part of how we view production, consumption, and the future of our planet. The Vikings, in their time, embodied a similar spirit, using the resources around them to create practical, durable items that allowed them to survive and thrive. Today, as we seek to build a more sustainable future, we can look to the past for inspiration. The Vikings, with their practical ingenuity and respect for natural resources, show us that living in harmony with the environment doesn't just benefit the planet. It can also benefit our lives and our culture. In addition to sustainability, the use of fish skin also raises important conversations about innovation and craftsmanship. The Vikings were pioneers of their time, creating durable and functional garments in a world where survival depended on their ability to adapt. Their craftsmanship wasn't driven by luxury or fashion. In the modern sense, it was driven by necessity. The garments they created were designed to withstand the elements and protect them in a hostile, often dangerous world. Today, we can see that same spirit of craftsmanship in the revival of fish skin. As a material, as artisans take inspiration from Viking techniques to create products that are not only functional, but also beautiful and innovative. What makes the revival of fish skin even more intriguing is its modern adaptation in industries beyond fashion. As we mentioned earlier, fish skin is being used in high-end furniture and accessories where its unique texture and durability are prized. But what about other industries? Could fish skin have applications in areas like technology, or even medicine. Some researchers are exploring the possibility of using fish skin for medical dressings, particularly for burn victims, as its natural properties make it a potentially valuable material for wound care. The material's waterproof, flexible, and biocompatible properties could offer new solutions for treating injuries in ways that we might not yet fully understand. This is just one example of how the innovative spirit of the Vikings is being rediscovered and adapted for modern needs. Looking back at Viking history, it's clear that their use of fish skin was not just a necessity. It was an example of how human beings can adapt to their environment and make use of the resources around them. In a world where we often think of progress in terms of technology and new materials, it's easy to forget the value of the simple, sustainable solutions that have existed for centuries. Fish skin, once used by Vikings to protect themselves from the cold and wet, is now helping to guide us toward a more sustainable, resource-conscious future. As we continue to grapple with the challenges of the modern world, the Vikings' ability to think resourcefully and creatively is a reminder that innovation doesn't always have to come from the latest technological advancements. Sometimes the best solutions come from the most basic natural materials, the kind of materials that the Vikings used every day to survive in their harsh environment. Fish skin, once a humble tool for Viking survival, is now a symbol of how ancient practices can be revitalized to solve modern problems. In the next section, we'll reflect on the broader impact of Viking ingenuity and how the legacy of their resourcefulness continues to influence us. As we look forward to a future shaped by sustainability, innovation, and respect for the environment, it's important to remember that the Vikings, with their deep connection to the land and sea, showed us the power of working with nature rather than against it. Their lessons are as relevant today as they were over 1,000 years ago. As we delve deeper into the Viking legacy, it becomes clear that their ingenuity wasn't limited to fish-skin garments or their mastery of seafaring. The Vikings were in many ways the ultimate survivors, constantly adapting and innovating to meet the challenges of their environment. Their resourcefulness wasn't just about turning fish skin into waterproof coats. It was about taking every available resource and making it work. This mindset is something we can take inspiration from today as we face global challenges that require creative solutions. One of the key aspects of Viking ingenuity was their understanding of materials. While we tend to think of them as fierce warriors or explorers, the Vikings were also excellent craftsmen. Whether they were building longships, forging weapons, or tanning fish skin, the Vikings had an unmatched ability to take what nature provided and transform it into something useful. This talent for adaptation is precisely what allowed the Vikings to survive in an environment where harsh winters, rough seas, and limited resources would have defeated less innovative cultures. The Viking way of life was built around resourcefulness. They didn't have the luxury of running to a store for a new coat or piece of equipment when something wore out. They had to repair, reuse, and recycle. In a way, the Vikings were the original upcyclers. They used what they had to create something new and functional. This attitude extended beyond their clothing. They used animal bones for tools, fish bones for needles, and even seal skins for waterproofing their boats. Nothing was wasted. If it could be used, it would be. This ability to make the most out of what was available was part of a larger worldview in which the Vikings saw themselves as part of a larger ecosystem. They didn't take more than what they needed. Instead, they worked in harmony with the natural world, taking only what was necessary and leaving the rest behind. This balance allowed them to live in one of the harshest climates in the world for centuries. The modern world, which often finds itself grappling with environmental degradation and unsustainable consumption could certainly learn a lot from this approach. Today, as we face growing environmental concerns, we are starting to see a shift back toward this mindset of resourcefulness. People are becoming increasingly aware of the wastefulness inherent in modern life. From the clothes we wear to the food we consume, there's a growing movement towards sustainability, and one of the cornerstones of this movement is the idea of using what we already have. Just like the Vikings' modern creators are embracing the idea of repurposing, upcycling, and creating products that are built to last, rather than products designed to be discarded after a season or two. This shift is reflected in the rise of sustainable fashion, which emphasizes the use of natural materials like fish, skin, hemp, and organic cotton. Consumers are increasingly looking for brands that prioritize environmental impact, opting for clothing made from materials that are not only functional, but also sustainable. Fish skin, as we've seen, is one of those materials. Once discarded as waste, it's now being turned into high-quality, durable fashion items that don't contribute to the growing problem of textile waste. In addition to sustainable fashion, we are also seeing a return to other Viking-inspired practices in the modern world. The rise of eco-friendly and sustainable architecture, for example, is grounded in the same principles that guided the Vikings in building their longhouses. They didn't have access to the same materials we do today, but they built their homes with what they had using timber and thatch in ways that worked with the natural environment. Modern architects, too, are increasingly looking for ways to build in harmony with nature, using sustainable materials and designs that minimize environmental impact. Viking ingenuity didn't just stop at practical things like clothing and architecture. It extended to every aspect of their culture. The Vikings were expert shipbuilders, using the resources around them to create vessels that could sail across vast oceans. Their longships, with their shallow drafts and sleek designs, allowed them to navigate both open seas and narrow rivers with ease. Today, modern engineers look to the same principles of efficiency and adaptability that the Vikings used in designing their ships, creating technologies that prioritize sustainability and performance. The Vikings also had an intimate relationship with the land and sea. Their understanding of nature wasn't just theoretical. It was practical, honed over centuries of living in one of the harshest climates in the world. They knew how to fish, hunt, and forage, using every part of the animals they caught and every resource they could find. This understanding of the environment allowed them to not only survive but thrive in places where other cultures might have perished. In the modern world, we are once again realizing the importance of reconnecting with nature, whether it's through urban farming, foraging, or simply spending more time outdoors. There's a growing recognition that we need to reestablish a more balanced relationship with the world around us. As we reflect on the Vikings' ingenuity, it's also worth considering how their mindset continues to influence us in more unexpected ways. The Vikings didn't just leave behind a legacy of survival. They left behind a legacy of creativity, adaptation, and innovation. They weren't just a people who conquered lands and fought battles. They were thinkers, tinkerers, and problem solvers. Their ability to adapt and create in the face of adversity is a powerful reminder that we too can meet the challenges of our time with creativity, resourcefulness, and resilience. In the next section, we'll look more closely at the cultural significance of Viking craftsmanship, exploring how their legacy in design and innovation has left a lasting mark on modern industries. Whether we're talking about the arts, engineering, or sustainable practices, the Vikings' ingenuity has inspired generations of creators, and their influence can still be felt today. The lessons they imparted on using what's available, thinking outside the box, and working with nature rather than against it, are more relevant now than ever before. As we continue to unravel the Viking legacy, it's impossible to ignore the incredible impact their craftsmanship has had on the world, not just in their time, but well into the modern era. While the Vikings are often remembered for their raids and their maritime prowess, their contributions to design innovation and resourcefulness have left a lasting mark on many industries today. From the ships they built to the clothing they crafted, the Vikings understood the value of combining practicality with creativity. Their legacy in craftsmanship can be seen in how modern industries approach sustainability, efficiency, and even aesthetic design. Take, for example, Viking shipbuilding. Viking longships were among the most advanced and efficient vessels of their time. These ships, with their shallow drafts and flexible design, allowed the Vikings to navigate both the open seas and narrow rivers, giving them a distinct advantage in both trade and warfare. Modern engineers still look to Viking shipbuilding techniques for inspiration when designing boats and ships that need to combine speed, efficiency, and adaptability. The Vikings' mastery in using available resources such as wood and animal hides illustrates a timeless approach to sustainable design. Their ships weren't just marvels of engineering, they were testaments to the Viking ability to craft something functional, beautiful, and built to last. Today, sustainability in design is a major focus, and Viking ingenuity has become a symbol of using nature's resources in ways that minimize waste and maximize function. Likewise, Viking textiles and clothing like their fish skin garments embody a similar spirit of efficient craftsmanship. Their fish skin coats were not just functional pieces of clothing, they were an example of adaptive thinking. Vikings worked with materials that were available to them using fish skins, animal pelts, and even plant fibers to create garments that could withstand the elements. These clothes were durable, waterproof, and perfectly suited to the harsh Nordic environment. Today, the fashion industry is increasingly looking toward sustainable, ethically sourced materials, and fish skin is making a comeback as an eco-friendly alternative to leather and synthetic fabrics. This resurgence is not just about creating unique, beautiful items, it's also about embracing the Viking mindset of using what's available to produce something functional and long-lasting. The modern focus on slow fashion and upcycling echoes the Vikings' commitment to sustainability and resourcefulness, proving that their methods can still inform modern practices. Beyond fashion and shipbuilding, Viking craftsmanship also extended to everyday tools, weapons, and artwork. Vikings were skilled blacksmiths, able to forge weapons and tools that were both practical and artistically crafted. Their swords, in particular, were renowned for their quality and craftsmanship. Viking blades were often inlaid with intricate designs, combining utility with artistry. Modern metalworkers and artisans still look to Viking designs for inspiration, incorporating elements of Viking weaponry and tools into contemporary creations. This blend of form and function is a hallmark of Viking craftsmanship, and it continues to influence industries such as weapon-making, metalworking, and even architecture. The Vikings' ability to combine practicality with beauty shows us that true innovation often arises when we balance both functionality and aesthetic value. One of the most remarkable aspects of Viking design was their ability to adapt their creations to their environment. The Vikings were masters at creating solutions that fit the specific challenges they faced, whether it was designing a boat that could sail across rough seas or crafting a coat that would keep them warm in sub-zero temperatures. This ability to create tailored solutions for real-world problems is something that modern designers and engineers continue to aspire to. The contemporary emphasis on user-centered design, whether in technology, fashion, or architecture, can be traced back to the Viking approach of creating products that were not just theoretical or artistic, but also practical, functional, and suited to the environment. In fact, Viking design principles are becoming more relevant as industries worldwide work to address the challenges of sustainability, resource management, and environmental impact. The rise of renewable energy, eco-friendly building materials, and sustainable transportation systems all reflect the same principles that guided the Vikings in their daily lives. Today's architects, engineers, and designers are increasingly inspired by the Viking ethos of using local renewable materials and creating products that stand the test of time, whether it's through passive, solar homes, sustainable agriculture practices, or energy-efficient vehicles. Modern creators are looking back at how ancient civilizations like the Vikings worked with their environment to create a lasting functional impact. But Viking craftsmanship wasn't just practical. It was also deeply embedded in their culture. For the Vikings, the objects they created were a reflection of their identity. The intricate carvings on their ships, the decorations on their weapons, and the patterns on their clothing were all symbols of their values, beliefs, and social status. Modern design, particularly in the realm of luxury goods, also places great emphasis on the cultural significance of products. Luxury brands often focus on crafting items that are not only beautiful and functional, but also imbued with meaning and symbolism. In this way, the Vikings' emphasis on personal identity and cultural expression through craftsmanship is reflected in today's fashion furniture and art. The Vikings didn't just build for survival, they built to express who they were. Their ships' weapons, and even their homes were a reflection of their culture values and worldview. This idea of crafting with meaning is something that continues to resonate in modern design. Whether it's through handcrafted goods, bespoke clothing, or limited edition art pieces, there's a growing appreciation for products that are made with intention, care, and meaning. The Vikings, long before the advent of modern mass production, understood that the things they created were more than just tools. They were reflections of their identity and their place in the world. The Viking focus on craftsmanship also extends to the tools they used in everyday life. Just as the Vikings crafted complex functional items like swords, boats, and clothing, they also made tools for farming, cooking, and building. These tools were designed to last, often passed down from generation to generation, and they were an essential part of Viking life. The idea of creating durable, high-quality tools that can stand the test of time is something that resonates in modern movements like the Maker movement, which encourages people to build, create, and repair items themselves rather than relying on disposable, mass-produced products. In the Viking world, craftsmanship was not just a profession, it was a way of life. The value placed on durable, functional tools is an idea that modern DIYers and crafters still embrace today. Looking at Viking craftsmanship through the lens of modern industry reveals just how timeless their innovations were. The tools, materials, and techniques they used have influenced countless industries from fashion and design to engineering and architecture. And while the world has changed significantly since the Viking Age, the fundamental principles of craftsmanship, resourcefulness, and sustainability remain just as relevant today as they were over 1,000 years ago. In the next section, we'll explore how the lessons learned from Viking craftsmanship can help guide us into the future. From sustainable practices to innovative design, the Viking legacy has much to offer as we continue to create a world that values functionality, sustainability, and artistry in equal measure. As we reflect on the Vikings' craftsmanship and the lasting influence it has had on modern industries, it's clear that their legacy is one of enduring creativity and innovation. The Vikings weren't just warriors and explorers. They were deeply rooted in their environment, continuously adapting and creating practical solutions to meet the challenges of the world around them. Today, as we face an array of global issues from environmental degradation to resource scarcity, there is much we can learn from the Viking approach to design sustainability and craftsmanship. One of the most important lessons we can take from the Vikings is their ability to work with what was available. The Vikings didn't have the luxury of mass production, synthetic materials, or complex technologies. Instead, they relied on natural resources: wood, metal animal skins, fish skins, and other locally sourced materials to create their tools, clothing, and vessels. This necessity-driven approach didn't just make their products functional, it also forced them to deeply understand the materials they worked with. They knew the properties of wood the way leather could be tanned, and how fish skin could be transformed into waterproof garments. This intimate relationship with materials allowed them to create products that were not only practical, but durable and built to withstand the harshest conditions. In the modern world, we are seeing a growing movement that emphasizes the importance of working with nature rather than against it. The rise of sustainable agriculture, renewable energy sources, and eco-friendly design is a reflection of this mindset. Much like the Vikings, who used every part of the animals they hunted and fished, today's designers, builders, and engineers are seeking ways to minimize waste, repurpose materials, and build solutions that work in harmony with the environment. From recycled materials in construction to sustainable fashion lines, there's a collective shift toward using what we have without over-exploiting or damaging the planet. The Viking ethos of resourcefulness is something that extends beyond just the materials they used. It's an attitude that permeated every aspect of their lives. Whether it was designing a ship that could traverse both open seas and narrow rivers, crafting a coat that would keep out the cold, or forging weapons that were both functional and beautiful, the Vikings approached every task with ingenuity. Today, we see a similar spirit of innovation in industries like technology and product design. Companies are increasingly focused on creating products that are multifunctional, adaptable, and efficient, much like the Viking ships and tools. One such example is the rise of modular design in everything from homes to technology. Just as the Vikings built ships and homes that could be adapted and repaired over time, modern designers are embracing the idea of modularity. Modular homes, for instance, are designed to be easily assembled and disassembled, allowing for flexibility and adaptability. Similarly, many modern tech companies are focusing on creating products that can be upgraded or repaired rather than replaced. This approach reduces waste and makes products more sustainable in the long run. The idea that things should be built to last and that they can evolve to meet changing needs is a direct reflection of the Viking approach to craftsmanship. Viking craftsmanship was also rooted in a deep sense of cultural identity. The objects they made weren't just utilitarian. They were expressions of their values, beliefs, and worldview. Viking swords and ships were often beautifully crafted with intricate carvings and designs that told stories about the people who created them. This cultural significance is something that modern designers and artisans are rediscovering. Today's luxury goods, from designer handbags to high-end furniture, are often imbued with cultural and personal meaning. Consumers are increasingly looking for items that tell a story and reflect their own values. This desire for meaning in our possessions echoes the Vikings' approach, where each item whether it was a ship, a coat, or a weapon, was a reflection of who they were and where they came from. This connection between craftsmanship and identity is also seen in the growing interest in personalized and bespoke goods. Just as Viking warriors might have had swords made to their personal specifications, or ships decorated with symbols of their clan, today's consumers are opting for items that are tailored to their unique needs and tastes. Whether it's a custom-made piece of jewelry, a personalized leather bag, or a bespoke suit, modern consumers are increasingly seeking products that feel personal and unique. This desire for individuality and authenticity is a direct result of the cultural significance the Vikings placed on their crafted objects. In addition to sustainability and personal identity, another lesson we can learn from the Vikings is their emphasis on community. Viking craftsmanship was often a communal effort with many tasks such as shipbuilding or metalworking, requiring collaboration and teamwork. The Vikings understood the importance of working together to achieve a common goal. In today's world, this sense of community is essential as we work to address global challenges, whether it's through collaborative efforts in innovation activism or environmental conservation. The Viking tradition of collective effort offers a model for tackling the complex issues we face today. In terms of the environment, the Vikings didn't just use materials from the land. They also understood how to respect and live in harmony with it. Their approach to fishing, hunting, and gathering wasn't about depleting the natural resources around them, but about maintaining a balance. This understanding of sustainability in the face of limited resources is something that resonates deeply today. As we face the reality of climate change and dwindling natural resources, there's a growing recognition that we need to live in a way that respects the environment and ensures that future generations can benefit from the same resources we have. The Vikings' adaptability also speaks to their ability to learn from other cultures. While they were fiercely independent, they didn't shy away from adopting and adapting ideas from other societies. Whether it was learning new agricultural techniques or borrowing designs from other cultures for their ships and weapons, the Vikings understood the value of knowledge exchange. Today, as global collaboration becomes increasingly important, this idea of sharing and learning from each other is more relevant than ever. Whether it's through international cooperation on climate change or the exchange of ideas and innovation, the Vikings' approach of borrowing the best from others is a lesson we can apply in our interconnected world. Looking to the future, the lessons from Viking craftsmanship offer valuable insights as we continue to develop new technologies, build more sustainable communities, and forge deeper connections with the natural world. The Vikings may have lived over 1,000 years ago, but their ingenuity, resourcefulness, and respect for the environment have left a lasting legacy. In a world that is constantly changing, the principles they embodied, innovation, adaptability, sustainability, and community, remain as relevant as ever. As we wrap up our journey through the Viking legacy, it's clear that their approach to design craftsmanship and sustainability has had a far-reaching impact. Whether it's in fashion technology or our approach to the environment, the Vikings continue to inspire us today. Their ability to create durable, functional, and beautiful items with the resources at hand serves as a timeless reminder that innovation doesn't always come from the latest technological advancements. It can come from working with what we have, using our ingenuity and respect for the natural world to build a better future. As we begin to wrap up this exploration of Viking ingenuity, craftsmanship, and the lasting influence it has had on modern society, it's clear that the Vikings weren't just conquerors. They were innovators, resourceful thinkers, and deeply connected to the world around them. Their ability to use the resources available to them to survive and thrive in a harsh environment is something we can all learn from today. As we face the challenges of the modern world, from climate change to resource depletion, the Viking mindset of adaptation, sustainability, and creativity provides valuable lessons that we can apply in every facet of our life. Of course, one of the key takeaways from our journey through Viking history is the idea of resourcefulness. The Vikings didn't have access to the advanced tools, materials, and technologies that we have today. Instead, they relied on their understanding of the natural world and their ability to make the most out of the materials available to them. Whether it was using fish skin to make waterproof garments or forging metal tools that could withstand the test of time, the Vikings knew how to maximize the potential of what they had. This ability to adapt to their environment and turn simple resources into life-saving tools is something that we can emulate in our own efforts to build a more sustainable future. Today, many industries are beginning to embrace the principles of resourcefulness and sustainability that the Vikings practiced. The rise of circular economies, where products are designed to be reused, repaired, and recycled, is a direct reflection of the Viking approach to making the most out of available materials. In the fashion industry, there's a growing emphasis on using natural, biodegradable materials like fish skin and organic cotton, as well as recycling old garments into new ones. In the construction industry, there's a movement toward using sustainable, locally sourced materials and designing buildings that are energy efficient and built to last. Just like the Vikings, modern creators are turning to nature for inspiration and finding ways to create products that are both functional and environmentally responsible. But resourcefulness isn't just about using natural materials, it's about making things that last. The Vikings weren't just concerned with creating temporary solutions. They wanted to build things that would endure. Their ships, weapons, and homes were built to withstand the harshest conditions, from freezing winters to rough seas. In the modern world, we are increasingly realizing the value of durability over disposable products. Today's consumers are more aware than ever of the environmental impact of fast fashion and the culture of throwaway goods. There's a growing demand for products that are built to last, whether it's a pair of boots, a kitchen appliance, or a piece of furniture. This focus on durability and longevity reflects the Viking ethos of creating with purpose and care, rather than simply creating for convenience or short-term use. In addition to their resourcefulness, the Vikings were also incredibly creative. Their ships weren't just functional, they were works of art, with intricate isvings and designs that told stories about their creators. Their weapons, too, were not just tools for battle, but symbols of their identity, often beautifully forged with elaborate designs. The Vikings understood that design wasn't just about utility, it was about expressing something deeper. This understanding of the connection between form and function is something that modern designers continue to explore. Whether it's in fashion architecture or industrial design, the integration of beauty and practicality is at the heart of many contemporary design philosophies. The Vikings, through their focus on creating functional, yet aesthetically pleasing objects, continue to inspire a new generation of creators. Another significant lesson we can take from the Vikings is their deep connection to the natural world. They didn't just take from the land and sea, they respected it. The Vikings understood the importance of living in harmony with their environment, using only what was necessary, and ensuring that resources were available for future generations. This respect for nature is something we are beginning to recognize again in the modern world as we strive to reduce our environmental footprint and adopt more sustainable lifestyles. Whether it's through the development of renewable energy sources, sustainable farming practices, or the protection of natural habitats, there's a growing recognition that we need to work with nature rather than against it. The Viking approach to living in harmony with the world around them offers valuable insights into how we can create a more sustainable and equitable future. As we look to the future, the Vikings' legacy offers us much to think about. 2. Their ability to adapt, innovate, and work in harmony with nature serves as a timeless reminder of the importance of creativity, sustainability, and resourcefulness. In a world that is rapidly changing, the lessons we can learn from the Vikings are more relevant than ever. Whether we're tackling global challenges like climate change, or simply trying to live more sustainably in our own lives, we can draw inspiration from the Vikings' ability to turn adversity into opportunity. Looking ahead, the modern world is ripe for new ideas and innovations that can help us meet the challenges of the 21st century. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can learn from the past and adapt those lessons to our modern needs. The Vikings were masters of adaptation, taking the resources around them and using them in new and creative ways. In many ways, the future of sustainability design and innovation lies not just in the new technologies we develop, but in the ancient practices and values that we can rediscover and apply. The use of fish skin in modern fashion, for example, is just one small piece of this larger movement. The Vikings' ingenuity in using fish skin as a material for clothing once thought to be lost to history is being revived by modern artisans who recognize the value of working with natural, sustainable materials. This shift toward using renewable, biodegradable materials instead of synthetic, harmful ones is a direct response to the environmental crises we face today. The revival of these ancient techniques offers a glimpse of what is possible when we look to the past for inspiration while creating a future that respects the planet. Ultimately, the Viking legacy is a celebration of creativity, resilience, and sustainability. It shows us that no matter how much the world changes, the principles of resourcefulness, ingenuity, and respect for nature remain as relevant as ever. The Vikings, with their ability to adapt to and work with their environment, created a model for living that we can look to as we face our own challenges. And just as the Vikings left their mark on the world, so too can we leave a lasting impact by embracing their legacy of innovation, sustainability, and craftsmanship. As we venture deeper into understanding how the Vikings' ingenuity continues to inspire modern society, it becomes evident that their ability to adapt and innovate was central to their success. In many ways, the Vikings were ahead of their time, not just in terms of their craftsmanship and seafaring skills, but also in their profound understanding of their environment and resources. This deep connection to the land, sea, and materials around them created a culture that valued sustainability, adaptability, and practicality. In the 21st century, these values are becoming more important than ever as the world confronts pressing environmental and societal challenges. One of the key aspects of Viking ingenuity that has enduring relevance today is their resourcefulness. The Vikings didn't just use fish skin for clothing. They made use of everything they could from the natural world. Every part of the fish animal or plant had a purpose, whether it was for food, tools, clothing, or shelter. In an age where the concept of waste didn't exist, the Vikings lived by a principle that many of us are now rediscovering. Nothing should go to waste. Their ability to repurpose and reuse materials is something that modern society is beginning to recognize as crucial to solving the problems of resource depletion and environmental degradation. As we shift toward more sustainable practices in manufacturing, construction, and consumer behavior, the Viking approach to material efficiency offers a model for how we can live in a more environmentally conscious way. Much like the Vikings, today's innovators are looking to natural materials to reduce our reliance on synthetic resource-draining products. Whether it's in sustainable fashion, eco-friendly building materials, or even in the way we approach food production and waste management, the principles the Vikings practiced are being brought into modern industries. Take, for instance, the rise of bio-based materials like hemp algae and fish skin in modern textiles. The Vikings didn't have the luxury of synthetic fibers, but they found creative ways to make use of what was around them. Similarly, today's designers and engineers are reimagining how we can use organic materials to replace plastics, synthetic fabrics, and other environmentally damaging substances. Fish skin, once a discarded byproduct, is now being used to make high-end fashion items and accessories thanks to its durability, water resistance, and unique texture. It's a prime example of how looking to the past can provide modern solutions to contemporary issues. Another crucial element of Viking ingenuity was their adaptability. The Vikings lived in an ever-changing world, one where they had to constantly adjust their strategies, tools, and technologies to survive. Whether it was adapting their boats for different waters, developing new methods of fishing and hunting, or even finding ways to use their surroundings to create shelter, the Vikings were constantly in a state of flux, always learning, evolving, and adapting to the environment around them. This ability to adapt to new circumstances is something we can learn from today, especially as we face the global challenges of climate change, economic instability, and rapid technological advancements. In modern life, adaptability has become more important than ever. The rapid pace of technological change, along with the increasing urgency of addressing climate change, has made flexibility a necessary trait for individuals, businesses, and governments alike. The Vikings, though facing different challenges, showed us that adaptability isn't just about survival, it's about thriving in a changing world. Their ability to constantly innovate and respond to new challenges with creative solutions is something that modern innovators must embrace in order to build a sustainable, resilient future. In addition to their adaptability, the Vikings were masters of collaboration. While they were often seen as independent warriors and seafarers, the Vikings understood the importance of working together. Shipbuilding, for example, was a highly collaborative effort involving carpenters, blacksmiths, and other craftsmen. The construction of longships required teamwork and shared expertise. Similarly, the Vikings' raiding expeditions were often the result of carefully planned collaborations, with multiple groups coming together to achieve common goals. This spirit of collaboration is something that modern society can benefit from as we confront the complex global issues of the 21st century. The need for collective effort is more pronounced today than ever before. Whether it's tackling climate change, addressing social inequality, or creating more sustainable economies. Many of the problems we face require cooperation and collaboration on a global scale. The Vikings understood that they were stronger when they worked together, and today we must adopt the same mindset. Governments, businesses, and individuals must come together, each contributing their unique strengths to address the challenges that threaten our future. Another important aspect of Viking culture that has relevance today is their deep respect for nature. The Vikings lived in a world that was governed by the forces of nature, weather, seasons, animals, and plants. Their survival depended on their ability to live in harmony with these natural forces. They understood that nature wasn't something to be conquered or exploited, but something to be respected and worked with. This understanding of the interconnectedness of life is something that is gaining increasing recognition today, as we realize that our survival as a species is intricately tied to the health of the planet. The modern, environmental movement has been gaining momentum in recent years as more people recognize the need to protect the natural world. The Vikings' connection to nature, while different in context, provides a valuable lesson in how we can live more sustainably. From reducing carbon emissions to preserving biodiversity, there's much we can learn from the Vikings' reverence for the earth. As we face environmental challenges, their example can guide us in developing a more balanced relationship with the world around us. Looking ahead, the future of innovation and sustainability will likely be shaped by a blend of ancient wisdom and modern technology. The Vikings' resourcefulness, adaptability, and respect for nature offer a blueprint for how we can approach the challenges of the 21st century, whether it's through the use of natural materials like fish skin, the development of sustainable energy systems, or the creation of more resilient communities. The principles the Vikings embodied can inspire us to rethink how we live and interact with the world. In the next section, we'll take a closer look at how these Viking principles, resourcefulness, sustainability, adaptability, and collaboration, can help guide us toward a more sustainable and equitable future. By looking to the past for inspiration and embracing the innovative spirit of the Vikings, we can create solutions that not only address the challenges of today, but also ensure a better future for generations to come. As we conclude our exploration of Viking ingenuity craftsmanship and how their legacy continues to shape the modern world, it's clear that the Vikings weren't just a fierce and warrior-driven society. They were creative innovators with a deep respect for their environment and a remarkable ability to adapt. Their culture, rooted in survival and resourcefulness, provides valuable lessons for us today. In a world increasingly defined by climate change, environmental degradation, and a rapidly shifting economy, the principles embodied by the Vikings, sustainability, adaptability, collaboration, and creative use of resources, have never been more relevant. At its core, Viking society was about making the most of what they had and using everything available to them. Whether it was crafting their renowned longships, creating functional garments from fish skin, or forging weapons and tools, the Vikings demonstrated an exceptional ability to transform the simplest materials into something durable, effective, and often beautiful. They didn't waste, and they didn't take more than what they needed. This mindset of sustainability, of making the most out of limited resources, speaks directly to today's challenges. As we face environmental and resource challenges in the modern world, the Viking approach to material usage offers us a path forward. The focus on reducing waste, reusing what's available, and working with nature instead of exploiting it is exactly what we need to address the current environmental crises. Take the revival of fish skin garments as an example. What was once seen as a byproduct of fishing discarded and forgotten is now a sustainable, innovative material used in modern fashion. The Vikings' use of fish skin not only allowed them to survive in one of the coldest and most hostile climates on Earth, but it's now being resurrected to reduce reliance on synthetic materials that contribute to environmental damage. This combination of historical knowledge and modern innovation offers a model for how we can rethink our relationship with materials and resources. Moreover, the Vikings were masters of adaptability. Their world was constantly shifting, whether it was the changing seasons, unpredictable weather, or the challenges of long voyages, and their ability to adapt was central to their success. They built ships that could withstand the harshest conditions, crafted clothing that could keep them warm and dry, and designed tools that could be used in a wide variety of environments. Today, we too face a world of change and uncertainty. The global economy is shifting. Climate change is intensifying, and technological advancements are rapidly changing the way we live and work. The Viking ethos of adaptability teaches us that in times of change, innovation and creativity are essential. Just as the Vikings adapted their ships to the seas they sailed, and their clothes to the bitter cold, we must adapt to the challenges of our own time by reimagining industries, rethinking production methods, and adopting sustainable practices that can thrive in a rapidly changing world. The collaborative spirit of the Vikings is another aspect of their legacy that has enduring significance. The Vikings, though, known for their individual bravery and strength, were also deeply reliant on teamwork. Whether it was the construction of their longships, which required the efforts of many different skilled craftsmen, or their raids, which relied on coordinated group efforts, the Vikings knew that success was often the result of collective action. In today's world, collaboration has never been more important. From addressing climate change to combating social inequality, the problems we face are too complex to solve alone. The Viking approach reminds us that working together, pooling resources and expertise is the key to overcoming the challenges of the 21st century. The Vikings didn't just build for survival, they built with purpose. Their craftsmanship was not only about functionality, but also about creating objects that had cultural and personal meaning. Their ships, weapons, and even everyday tools were often beautifully crafted with intricate designs that reflected their identity and values. This connection between form and function, beauty and utility, is something that resonates with modern creators across industries. Today's design philosophies increasingly emphasize the importance of marrying function with aesthetics, whether in the design of a product, an architectural space, or even a sustainable lifestyle. The Vikings understood that the objects they made were not just tools. They were a reflection of who they were, their place in the world, and the values they held dear. Modern consumers, too, are seeking products that reflect their own identity and values, from eco-conscious fashion to sustainable housing to locally sourced food. As we look to the future, the Viking model of innovation, one that draws from nature, values sustainability, and celebrates craftsmanship, has much to offer. While the Vikings may have lived in a different time, their lessons about working with the Earth's resources, adapting to change, and collaborating with others are timeless. These principles can guide us as we navigate the complexities of the modern world. In fact, the challenges we face today require us to adopt many of the same strategies that the Vikings used to survive and thrive in their environment. To do this, we must embrace the idea of sustainability, not just as an environmental issue, but as a cultural and societal one. Sustainability means making conscious choices that prioritize the long-term health of our planet and its inhabitants. It means moving away from a throwaway culture and instead creating products, systems, and lifestyles that are built to last. Just as the Vikings carefully crafted tools, ships, and clothing to endure, we must design and produce in a way that respects both people and the environment. Finally, as we face the challenges of the future, we must also acknowledge the importance of historical wisdom. The Vikings lived in a time without the technology and resources we have today, yet their ability to innovate with what they had allowed them to build a lasting legacy. As we develop new technologies and strategies to address global issues, we must look back to the past and learn from the principles that guided ancient cultures like the Vikings. Their respect for nature, resourcefulness, and adaptability is something that can continue to inspire and shape our future. In closing, the Viking legacy is a powerful reminder that innovation is not just about the latest technology. It's about using what we have in creative and sustainable ways to meet the challenges of the world. As we move forward, let's honor the lessons of the Vikings by embracing their resourcefulness, adaptability, and respect for the environment. By doing so, we can build a future that is not only innovative and sustainable, but one that is deeply connected to the natural world, much like the Vikings were so many centuries ago.